Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you this week. We're going to talk about the Ford Bronco Sport Sasquatch. Bit of a surprise and delight. Road test editor Zach Palmer drove it down in Tennessee. So we're going to talk about that. We both have spent some time in the GMC Hummer EV 3X. It's big, it's electric. There's a bit to unpack there. We'll talk about the Mercedes GLA 35 and the Lexus LS 500H. News this week is a fire at the Rivian factory, some F1 notes, news and notes, and the Volkswagen ID.Buzz price. It's a little bit higher than you think. We will spend some money at the end of the show. Stick around for that. It's a good one. So with that, let's bring in road test editor Zach Palmer.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. It is hot. Summer is not giving up without a fight. It is, I believe, close to 90. It was close to 90 yesterday. I've got a little bit of a sunburn here because I was out in the sun all weekend. Got a little bit of golf in on Sunday, and I forgot to wear sunscreen, so I'm looking a little bit toasty. But that's okay.
Yeah, I got a similar amount of sun this weekend. I went down to the Ann Arbor Lazy River, Huron River.
Yeah.
Floated about a little bit. I guess we're doing a similar last throes of summer thing here, getting a little bit of sun in.
Did you do is it the tube sort of float down the Huron? Is that what you did?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Floated all the way down there. It's just like a nice little 3 to 4 hour float.
Okay.
I'd say. And just packed the it was a Mercedes SUV GLC that I had. I know that you guys talked about that in a previous podcast, but yeah, it was good, a little Ann Arbor vacation, I guess, an hour away from home, and a good time in the summer.
I actually did something similar, only we did tubing through the sort of rapids part of it, where you kind of go over they're almost like rocks. It's almost like shoals, I would say, kind of bumpy, and then it's much shorter. But tubing on the Huron River, it's a good time. So
it comes highly recommended from both of us, it sounds like.
Indeed, it's good. You definitely want to come prepared with your whatever life jacket you might want, and then make sure you have a fully inflated good tube. We were using basically kids' beach toys, and that's a little bit bumpy. You want to if you can, even consider renting them. So check it out. All right. Well, we got some cool cars to talk about this week. The Bronco Sport Sasquatch. You went down to Tennessee and you got to drive a prototype, which is a pretty cool little thing. It definitely takes the Bronco Sport, which for everybody out there who maybe get confused, this is the smaller, very squared off version of the bigger Bronco. We knew this was going to happen when they basically teased the Bronco itself about 5 years ago, even farther back. We knew the Bronco Sport was always going to be a thing. I think it's struggled, pardon the pun, to gain traction as much as the Bronco has. It really has been in the shadow of its sort of older brother, larger brother, for obvious reasons. The Bronco is restyled like the icon that it was in the 60s going forward. This has definitely been something that fell somewhere between that and just like a Ford Escape, almost competitor. But now reports, now we think the Escape is about to go away. So it's going to clear out some space for the Bronco Sport, and it appears to be better. So tell me about this thing.
Yeah, Bronco Sport Sasquatch is the big news for 2025. This is effectively the mid-cycle refresh for the Bronco Sport.
Okay.
Neither the big Bronco nor the Bronco Sport have really received any sort of notable updates since they were revealed. Of course, we had the Bronco Raptor, which was a pretty big deal model that came out, but this is another big deal for the Bronco Sport lineup, I would say. The one that I got to drive specifically was that Sasquatch model, which was a prototype. It was on Ford's Bronco Off-Rodeo Trail, actually. So this is one of their off-rodeo properties. They have a number of them around the country. This was the one that is in Marysville, Tennessee. It is still under construction, actually. So I was only allowed to go on a small little portion of it. it is hours and hours of trails. But if you read my story, you'll see that I only drove it for about 20 minutes or so. And, that's obviously enough to get, a little bit of an idea, but it's not a true first drive, the likes that we normally do. But that is also an understandable limitation when you're looking at a prototype vehicle. Regardless, there's a lot of stuff on here that definitely makes it, more serious of an off-roader. You get Bilstein rear shocks that even have piggyback reservoirs, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That's almost some desert running type things. But no, that's just it's there to help make the impacts less extreme when you do land back down on Earth. If you are getting a little bit of air going over obstacles, the ground clearance is a tiny bit more because of that. It has some different springs, has a lot more underbody protection. This big brush guard up front with some steel bash plates. And then, of course, the tires are upgraded. It has these new Goodyear Territory all-terrains, which have a much blockier tread. And they also has some new wheels for that new rubber to wrap. And yeah, like it looks the part. Like it looks like a much more aggressive Bronco Sport. Now, of course, it's still like a unibody crossover type thing. Like if you're doing like true real off-roading, you're still gonna want like the big Bronco. But this is almost, trying to split the difference. We're getting more and more of these sorts of vehicles out there, like the Crosstrek Wilderness. It's a very weirdly serious small crossover that can go off road. And if you're off camping, if it's a tough to get to trail, you just feel a little bit more confident going out there. And that's sort of the idea with this Bronco Sport Sasquatch package. You can get it on both the Badlands and the Outer Banks trims, which is also a little bit surprising that they're offering it on the Outer Banks, because that means you can get this package with either the 2-liter 4-cylinder or the 1.5-liter 3-cylinder. And it also brings the fancy torque vectoring rear diff to the Outer Banks model, while that was previously a Badlands exclusive. So, a number of changes in here to make the Bronco Sport better. I think honestly one of the biggest changes is the interior, a new screen, new cluster as well. It's much improved over like the pretty dated Sync 3 software that the previous one was running, and it's just a lot more modern. And I wouldn't even say nicer inside, but just more up to date with the rest of the Ford lineup and like what you would expect for a crossover that you're going to be paying premium money for, because the Bronco Sport is not a cheap SUV at all. It hasn't been from the start. And while Ford did not reveal pricing for this new Sasquatch, you definitely should expect it to be expensive, and without a doubt the most expensive of the whole lineup. Honestly, even probably intruding on like the big Bronco prices for like a base or like a Big Ben trim, I would guess. So yeah, that was my experience with the Bronco Sport. The actual off-roading of it, like, is it better? Like, I mean, I'd say sure, just from all of the specs that you get, like it should be better. Um, you know, are people going to really push this thing to its absolute limits? I would also guess no. But they are definitely higher now. I would say mostly thanks to the new tires and the new Bilstein shocks back there, which I hope honestly help the on-road ride as well. Like I feel like they have the potential to do that, but we'll just have to wait and see, honestly, because I just drove it on some rocks and mud. But yeah, that's Bronco Sport.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think these are critical updates for the Bronco. I think adding the Sasquatch package gives a little bit of a halo to the Bronco Sport line, kind of lets if say you're going to buy a Bronco Sport, this lets you get perhaps a little more excited about it than if, hey, I couldn't get the actual Bronco, or I didn't want it or couldn't afford it. This, I think, makes it a little more of an enthusiast off-roaders thing, whether you actually go ahead and get that Sasquatch package or not. Um, yeah, I've done some off-roading in that part of the world. I did a Volkswagen Atlas first drive. I drove a prototype in southeastern Tennessee too, not quite there. But yeah, it was kind of cool. It's a nice hilly part of the country to do some drives. I think Mercedes used to do trips in that part of the world as well. Um, No, that's cool. I think kind of searching through what everybody's officially said. Well, I don't know if Ford's officially said the Escape's gone, but a lot of reports out there that it will be. And if you kind of look at the sales volume, it's like, okay, so second quarter 2024, you've got Escape at about, call it 38,000. Then you've got Bronco Sport at like 28,000. And then the Bronco itself is at like 26,000. Bronco still looking healthy. But it's kind of like take the big Bronco out of the equation. It's kind of like it sure looks kind of like the Escape of the Bronco Sport, which are each down. Escape's down 13%, Bronco Sport's down 15%. Um, sure seems like they're kind of cannibalizing each other. So I think this refresh with kind of like a fun model in there to get people excited, with the likely pending demise of the Escape, ergo, the Bronco Sport's going to be a bit healthier. So, and I still think it's a pretty cool looking little crossover. Like you see them on the road, especially some of those like throwback models, which with like the different paint schemes. I mean, I think it'd be a fun thing to drive. It's the right little crossover for a lot of people. Uh, and Ford's got kind of a large batch of things in this segment, so, and they also have basically, we think the Edge is going to go away as well. So they're kind of sort of clearing some space out here. And I think that'll give the Bronco Sport room to run and maybe pick up some sales volume. So I think it
Yeah.
would be fun off road too. Like I've driven the Jeep Cherokee off road, uh, like the Trailhawk edition, things like that at different Jeep events. And it's smaller. It fits pretty well in tight spaces. Like there's a lot to like about a smaller off-roader, even something that does slot below, say the Wrangler or the Bronco, that type of thing. I mean, I was just in a Gladiator and love it. Talk about off-roaders, like this was the Mojave X trim. Off-roaders that ride great on road, that's it right there. But that thing off-road would be tough, because it's pretty big. So I like what they're doing with the Bronco Sport. I can't wait to drive
Yeah.
one.
It is weirdly fun to wheel off road. Like you don't have that sort of invincibility feeling like you do
Yeah.
in like a big Bronco because it's like, all right, if I like slide down this embankment right now, I don't have like a rock rail that's gonna save the door. It's like, nope, the door is gone. But like if you're driving over like directly over like a rock or something like that, you have a really great camera system that you can see HD. You have some really great tire path indicators as well. And then, of course, that really squared off design gives you a great look at like where are the actual corners of the vehicle, because it's just like you're saying, it is not a big vehicle at all. It's not the greatest turning radius, I would say. Like I did have to do a little 3-point turn a couple times because the trail was just that tight, and even with that small of a car, it could not do it. But like all of those bash plates and skid plates under, like it gives you a lot more confidence than you would have in, I don't know, something like a RAV4 or like a Ford Escape, I suppose, to just send it down a trail where maybe you'd be a little sketched out otherwise. So there's there's some other like cool little features, like Ford added these grab handles for like off-roading. So they're sort of like what the Porsche Cayenne has right there in the center console, for like a passenger to grab onto. They added aux switches for people that want to add accessories out there, which is sort of a very big Bronco move. And they also added these really sweet tie bar straps in the fenders where you can tie things that you secure to the roof down onto. So just like small little things that make, maybe you're going camping, doing some light off-roading work, just a little bit better, I think, for 2025, beyond the actual just like off-road driving thing that you get with the Sasquatch. So, yeah.
Cool. Check out Zach's full story on our site. He's got the full rundown with what the Sasquatch is, how it drives, and also all of the changes for the new model year of the Bronco Sport. So I guess what's the opposite of a small off-roader that you could fit in different places? I would say that's the 2024 Hummer EV 3X. We both drove this thing. It's a lot of fun. It's everything about this thing is monstrous. Sticker, $105,000. It's enormous. I was looking at some of the specs. I believe it's 4 inches wider than a Tahoe. So just kind of wrap your brain around that. Um, and it's a beast. Let's see, it says it offers 314 miles of driving range. I had a bit of a charging adventure this weekend, which we could get into. Uh, but generally speaking, I liked it. I can't wait to hear what you think. I think it's like driving a transformer, which I believe it actually is in one of the movies. I think the Hummer plays a transformer. Uh, it gets tons of stairs. This one was a shade of supernova metallic, which is just like a nice shade of blue. And the inside was Lunar Horizon, which actually, I don't know if you noticed this, there were some very nice, kind of like almost bronzed accents on the vents. So that was cool. It had that kind of lunar vibe to it. Um, I crab walked with it. That's cool. It's a little challenging. I kind of forgot about that. Lots of like surprise and delight functions. Like when you brought it over, just we figured out how to open the rear swing out door with the push of the button. If you
Yeah.
walk up to it, the grill lights up, which I think is just outstanding. Uh, I don't know. I will say this as the weekend wore on, I was liking it a little bit less. Like it is huge, and it's a bit of work to drive in a way that honestly, like the Gladiator that I drove a few weeks back, it didn't get old. I kept wanting to drive it more. So, what's your take on this thing?
Yeah, this is a complicated vehicle. I think that's I have somewhat of a complicated take on it. Um, I think end of story, like I ended up really liking it, like over my like 4 or 5 days of driving it. Uh, and I ended up liking it a lot more than I liked it just from like specs and like an on paper sort of perspective, because you get into this thing and you start to realize like what it's really about is like, all right, you are the king of the road. It's all about design. It's not necessarily even that utilitarian inside. Like it's huge, but if you want to load up anything into the cargo area, it's like way high off the ground,
It's
and
big, yeah.
it honestly, like versus a lot of other SUVs and crossovers, it's not that tall of a space or that great of a space. It's just so wide. Like when you try to get in and out of it, it has these nice big grab handles, but it's just a chore, I guess, to use like most of the time, honestly. And driving it like that, just like you were saying about the Gladiator, you kind of have to like pay attention like 100% of the time when you are driving it because it is so dang wide.
Yeah.
And like if you like you can't just like mindlessly change the radio or
Yeah.
adjust the song or something like that, because if you do stop paying attention for like the smallest of a second to like where you are, like what you're doing with the steering wheel, you will be out of the lane
Yes.
of wherever lane you're in, and just merging into wherever. That is one thing. That is one place where Super Cruise, I think, honestly helped a lot.
Yeah.
When I was on the highway, I drove this thing to Ann Arbor and back from my place in Oak Park. So that was I don't know, that was about like 45 miles of highway use right there, and I used Super Cruise like the whole time. And I had to interrupt it once or twice because I was going by a big semi truck, and well, this thing is wide, and so is a semi truck, and you just get kind of close and a little bit uncomfy, I would say. You just want to move over in the lane, but for the most part, you can remove, I think, a lot of that stress of like this is such a big vehicle and this is such a hassle uh, by doing that on the highway. So Super Cruise is like I think a really really necessary thing that this car has, and thankfully it works well. Works like an Escalade, works like any of the other big GM trucks that have it, which is really sweet. Downsides on the highway, it's like crazy noisy. Those mirrors and the block shape of it, like like you have to turn the radio up because it's just playing loud in there like that with the all-terrain tires, and there's no engine or anything like that. It's just wind and road noise. So I wouldn't say it's the greatest highway cruiser. It's also not that efficient either, just like any other big truck. You'll get between like 1.5 and 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is not a great efficiency number for any kind of an EV.
I mean, it's a
Um,
Hummer, right? I mean,
exactly. It drinks electrons like a Hummer, just like the old gasoline Hummers drink gas. Um, so those are some downsides. Now every time I would hit the gas on this thing, like it's just plain hilarious watching the hood rise up like a bow on a
mhm.
boat, almost like it's just like this slow rise all the way to the top. And if you look at the camera rear view mirror while that happens, you'll see it just pointing directly at the ground as the whole thing just squats like crazy. It's just hilarious in those ways, and for those reasons, like I really like it because it has these sort of like super truck vibes, and that it's like so stupid fast from this three motor EV system. Um, so yeah, I obviously didn't take it off road where it might obviously show a lot of its advantages for why someone would actually buy one of these. But you can still have a lot of fun with it on road. I took all of the infinity panel roof panels off, and you drive it around, it kind of feels like a convertible. It gets rid of the sort of confining feeling that you get when those panels are on. It's almost has like it's strangely poor visibility, honestly, with all of those panels on, and like sometimes I was craning my neck to see the lights. You can't really see that well out the back or to the sides, and it's just this like huge vehicle. It's like, why can't I see out of this? It's kind of weird, but you can take those off, and just like any other convertible, boom, super great visibility. Um, so I don't know, like so many like pluses and minuses to this thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with
but
that.
like I don't know, like I ended up really enjoying it. Like would I want to commute in it as like my everyday car? Like, oh, it's an EV, just buy it and commute. No, I don't think so. It's a bit much for everyday driving, but it's a sweet like second, third car or something like that to just go have fun in, I'd say, is I guess
Yeah.
sort of where I landed on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I should mention I actually undersold the price. It's $107,610. I left out the destination charge. So it gets even more expensive. I'd agree with you. A couple points that struck with me, resonated with me. With the roof on, it is like I like that kind of like army sort of Humvee feel with like you're high up, but it's like a chopped roof. Like it's cool, it's fun. But to your point, as the weekend wore on with me, it started to bug me. It was a little bit claustrophobic when you had that roof
Yeah.
on. The interior is wide as hell, but surprisingly kind of tight. Like the back row, I thought was a little tight as far as just like getting in and out of, and like, because you really got to climb up into it. So there's not a huge landing area for humans. I didn't even try to put my dog in there. Um, there's that, and also yeah, I mean, like those mirrors, it's like they're truck mirrors. It's really hard. Like the blind spots are unbelievable at
Yeah.
points. Um, but, again, I mean, it's got like a switch where you can roll down the back window, like a Forerunner, other old school off-roaders. It's hard not to like its charm, but also not be super annoyed by all the things we've laid out. And also, like, I found the switches to be pretty annoying. Like I would start the car and all the seat coolers were on. Like, okay, yeah, it's 90, that's fine, great. But also that's a real pain, literally. I mean, because then you have to turn it off. And like if you hit the seat switch buttons in particular, you hit one button, it takes you to another button that lights up, and then you have to manually turn those down. And, deal breaker, of course not. But that was just a little example of how I found like just the interface to be kind of annoying. But I mean, the seat maps, the floor mats are topographic maps. The infotainment is cool when you look at all the different like things it tells you about the vehicle. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think you'd be better off if you wanted a large electric vehicle to look at like just the Silverado EV or something. This is a luxury good in the same fashion that like the Galanda wagon is there for people who want to spend some money and have something that's different. So
It
I, yeah,
it does give sort of G-Wagon vibes in that, you know, doesn't make much sense for many people to like own and use this car. No, but is it like cool as hell? Yes, it is. I don't know if you saw any sort of lag and just annoyance with the infotainment system, but like
Yeah,
whenever I was going through things, I was like, why is this thing so slow and laggy? Like this is supposed to be like GM's latest and greatest. It's not the one that doesn't have CarPlay and Android Auto, but it was just like strangely slow in moving through all of the screens, both on the infotainment screen itself and on the instrument cluster. And I mean, just similar like weird quality things like the materials on the interior. I don't really feel like $107,000 car. I
yeah,
wouldn't say like I would expect more leather like a Denali, to keep the GMC reference going, I suppose. But I think they're going more for like this ruggedized plastic feel, which I'm not necessarily a fan of. Like I enjoyed the
yeah,
colors, I enjoyed the cool textures on like the speakers but it just it fell short of the $107,000 smell test for an interior of this size and this caliber of a vehicle, at least for me.
yeah. I would disagree with that. I think I kind of gave it a break just because, hey, it's the Hummer, and I sort of like we know it's expensive and we know it's got that off-road vibe. So I don't know. I did see a guy in a bright red H2 who gave me like some sort of wave, and I'm thinking, oh man, I don't know. This is kind of weird. But it was fun. I liked it. It was a fun weekend with it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm just so very conflicted about the car. I think like
yeah.
there's so many things that I do really love about it, just from like I don't know, like a car enthusiast
Oh
perspective
yeah.
almost, that like I'm glad this thing exists like
Yes.
as it is, because it's so rad. But at the same time, it just flawed in all of these different ways. And you can sort of pick apart a car like that, but at the end of the day, like it's a car to have fun.
Hmm.
Like that feels like its mission and its purpose, and it's not like here to try and save the world of all these gas guzzlers or anything like that. It's here to make EVs fun and engaging for people, and I feel like in that way it sort of accomplishes its mission. Could it do it in like and just not have some of the downsides? I think also yes, but no, it's just a strange proposition out there, and hopefully GMC continues to make them for a while yet, because it's always fun seeing them on the road.
I did say, or I did find that I actually preferred the SUV variant to the truck, which I did a
Yeah,
prototype drive of that, geez, 3 years ago at this point, and then of course we had it for Tech of the Year a couple years ago, and we've actually had the truck a few times now. I just kind of like the SUV a little bit better. I thought I liked the truck more at the start. I go back and forth with all these off-roaders. Do I like the truck better? Do I like the SUV better? If you've been listening to the show, I'm really, warm on the Gladiator right now. But I don't know. I just kind of found I like how it looks a little bit better. That's the Hummer EV versus the Hummer super truck, we'll call it. So
super track.
yeah. All right. Well,
uh,
we're really kind of bouncing all over the spectrum here. We'll go to the Mercedes GLA 35, which we both did spend some time in. So tell me what you think of this thing.
GLA 35, the smallest, sort of silliest AMG product, I
Yeah.
suppose, out there. But also really charming, I think. I was a fan of it. I honestly ended up liking it more than I thought I was going to like it. Not in like the same way as the Hummer, but I guess I sort of arrived to my liking it
Hmm.
in the same way as I arrived to liking the Hummer, which is just driving it and not really thinking about, oh, it's the 35. It has a four-cylinder. Oh, you know why does this thing deserve the AMG badge? Like, no, you just drive it. It's actually like a lot of fun. So it has the 2 liter turbo four-cylinder, just 302 horsepower, but the 8-speed DCT, which I think is really key to it being so fun. because super, super close ratio gears, really, really snappy responses from those paddles. And it makes like everyday driving all that much more entertaining because, whether you're going up to Trader Joe's, or actually going out to like a really cool back road, like you can just have fun with those 100% of the time. Listen to the turbo whooshing, the exhaust snap, popple, crack on this thing, and it has the powertrain, I think, to back up that AMG name because it's just plain fun to use. Um, the looks too. This thing had the AMG aerodynamics package on it, which was really, I mean, honestly, a bit silly at first blush. Like it has this huge wing, it has a splitter, has flicks, uh, like it has a somewhat sizable diffuser back there. Like that's all very silly on like this little sort of egg blob looking GLA. But honestly, like it turned a lot of heads, and I thought it was kind of cool and pretty much like a boy racer style thing, for this $70,000 car. Which I guess that's also something that we should talk about. This thing, as tested, $73,460, which just kind of blew my mind, honestly, for how expensive they could make this. Because this is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this car is about the size of like a Hyundai Kona, I would say. If you just want to put it into size perspective, does it, should a Hyundai Kona size Mercedes with this level of performance cost $73,000? That's a very tough sell for me, honestly. And that's honestly what hurts this car the most for me. And like, would I recommend someone go buy this as their like do it all singular performance car? That's tough.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just does so many things, good and still like AMG-ified, that I can't really hate it. I can't really dislike it because I just had a ball driving it. I know that you drove it for a while too. I don't know if you ended up feeling the same way about it being so fun, but it's like a little Mercedes hot hatch that is a lot more expensive than most hot hatches you would get out there.
Yeah, as far as the execution, it's a riot, man. It's a bloody riot. I had so much
Yeah.
fun driving it. I think it looks cool. It feels like an AMG. I mean, I was at the very tail end of like when the 6.3, 6.2 AMG, motor was like all anybody could possibly fathom. And then to arrive at this, I think it's cool. I think it's good. It really spreads out the notion of what AMG is in a good way. But I mean, for me, it's just like, why would you spend 70 grand on this thing? Like, look at how much E-Class you could get for 70 grand. But if I would say this, if this is how you want to have fun, more power to you. I had a great time with it. I mean, it's got to be like, the thing is, it doesn't need to be a third car. You certainly could daily drive this thing for a variety of things. So it's just the use case kind of like makes my head explode. Beyond that, it's a nice product. It's good execution. If you're an enthusiast, I dare you to get behind the wheel and not like it. It's cool.
Yeah, and like I feel like I should also just shout out the seats on the one
Yeah.
that we had too. Like they're for all intents and purposes like super aggressive bucket seats that I would expect in something like an AMG GT
Hmm.
or like a super like dead serious AMG performance car. And Mercedes chucks them in this little GLA 35. You obviously have to pay for them. It's about a $3,250 package to be exact. But like if I was buying it, I would definitely spec those seats, and like it just ramps up the whole atmosphere of the car, which maybe it doesn't look like it on the badge, but this car has a lot of atmosphere and is honestly more fun than most enthusiasts might think it is from first look.
100%. 100%. So let's go. We'll just keep boomeranging around the car segment here to the Lexus LS 500h. I have not driven an LS in quite some time, so I'm very curious. What do you think of this thing?
LS 500H. Yeah, so I was I was in the same boat as you. Like I had not driven an LS for a very, very long time. This of course being the hybrid, so it has the naturally aspirated V6 and a pair of electric motors to motivate you onward. This one was also, it was a very like just understated spec, like a silver outside with this sort of white and black two-tone inside. But I think like the whole mantra for this car, honestly, is just like you got to take life easy. Just take it real, real easy because it doesn't like pretend to be a sports car or try and have like super great handling, like say a BMW 7 Series or even an S Class. Might be you know interesting and or fun to drive. Now this thing is just about driving slow, riding so beautifully, super quiet inside. It's not like a rackety hybrid system or anything like that. It's very, very quiet and understated. And like every single move that it makes, like even when you do try and put it like everything into the Sport Plus mode, like there's some added, sort of pumped in noise into the cabin, but like doesn't really feel like it wants to do anything sporty. I guess it just rides like a pillow across pretty much any of these terrible Michigan roads that of course we have. And that interior is pretty. I think it's starting to be a little dated, though. I will note that Lexus updated it with the latest Toyota Lexus infotainment system here recently, that which is a huge improvement because now you have wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. And one of the things that I will point out with this car is that it's the first car I've driven that has LiDAR on it,
That's
which
cool.
is I know I feel like that's a somewhat little known fact, honestly, about the LS, is that you can get this advanced drive system on it, which has LiDAR sensors front, rear, and on the front fenders as well. And it's this teammate advanced drive system. It works pretty much similar thing as like Super Cruise or Blue Cruise. It has a little driver monitor that watches you and only works on roads that are mapped. So I tried it out, and I'd say that it is the most heavily nannied system of all of them out there. Like it, whatever leeway that some system like Super Cruise or Blue Cruise gives you, Lexus does not. It starts chirping at you straight away, and is very communicative when it goes on and off. There's a little voice orator that comes over and basically tells you exactly what it's doing at like every single time it kicks on and off, which gets a little bit old, honestly, but I understand that's a very Lexus and or Toyota thing to do. Be like really over communicate about what is going on with this hands-free system. Um, when it is on and it's working, it works really nicely. Honestly, I wouldn't say that it's like better than something like the Super Cruise or Blue Cruise, but and I don't know if I should or shouldn't expect that because of the LiDAR, but it does work well, and it works as it's advertised. You just have to really pay rapt attention to the road, so that it does in fact know that you are watching. So there's that, and then I also hopped into the back seat, of course, because that's probably one of the most comfortable places to be. It had the executive package back there, so it had the nice big center console. You can lean the rear seat back, listen to the Mark Levinson audio system, which honestly is like one of the best in the game, and especially when you're in an LS that has like the top tier system of all of them in there. It's just like this little, I know that Lincoln and some other brands like advertise this sort of nature escape and just really rejuvenating and just nice. And like this is honestly like one of the best experiences out there, I think, just based on the comfort of the seat, the sound, the refinement of the ride. Don't leave the Lexus LS out of the picture, I suppose, especially if you want something with really good fuel economy, because like there's obviously the plugins from the 7 Series and the S Class, but this is a somewhat unique proposition out there, especially with the hybrid powertrain.
I like that hybrid element as well, and I actually like how this thing looks. I think it's The
Yeah.
LS hasn't design has not necessarily been its calling card for much of its career. I like how this new one looks. So, where would you put it with, say, like comparable S Class, 7 Series, etc.? You have it ahead of anything in
I
there I might be surprised at?
Yeah, I would sort of put it on a similar level as like a Genesis G90, as this is the budget pick, I'd say, because like you can get a lot of the features that are in like an S class or a 7 series, but it's gonna be like 10, $20,000 less than those options, honestly, which is pretty great. Obviously, if you do want like the latest and greatest as far as the tech, like a 7 Series has auto opening and closing doors. The S Class has, some really, really crazy air suspension. Like all of those things are without a doubt like more cutting edge on like the Germans, but just like a back to basics, take it easy, don't really care about driving dynamics from like a sporty perspective, go get the Lexus LS because like it's also just probably like from a longevity standpoint. I mean, look at like the original Lexus LS. People still really want those and they're worth money.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, there's no guarantee that the modern one will be just as reliable. Obviously, that'll take years, but just from a reputational standpoint, um, the Lexus LS has a lot going for it there, and I feel like a lot of people may or may not forget that it exists. When you have these really like just way at the top echelon 7 series and S class out there that have all the crazy fancy tech on them. Maybe you don't need some of that. Maybe you can save 10 or 15,000 and enjoy the Lexus, which is a joy in its own right.
All right. Sounds good. So let's run through some news. Busy week in the car world. A lot to talk about here. Dealer's choice. Let's go with the Rivian fire. This is happened over the weekend at their factory in Illinois. Nobody injured, first of all, but
Good.
multiple vehicles were damaged. The cause of the fire is not known. In Rivian, according to our reporting here through Reuters, we don't have the number and type of vehicles damaged, but I mean, it was a fair amount. If you look at some of the pictures out there, you can see that there was a pretty big fire. So obviously, this is when you see things happen like this to startups, which I don't think I would really call Rivian a true startup anymore. Some of their vehicles are now in like their second generation. I don't know if I'd really call that for the R1S, the R1T, but they have gotten to the point where they've done significant facelifts. This is definitely a bit of a stubbing their toe at the very least. And Rivian and I believe Volkswagen announced a software deal earlier this year where Rivian is going to provide some technical elements to Volkswagen, whereas Volkswagen is going to basically give Rivian money to stay in business, which I think is critical. So I think that's a great deal for Volkswagen for starters. For Rivian, I don't know. I mean, I guess you get to live to fight another day, but you're also giving away your secret sauce. So long story short, when you start to see things like that, you'll get a little nervous. When you see things like this, you get even more nervous because we don't know what caused the fire, but it's never a good look when you're an electric vehicle maker and there's a big fire at your factory. So, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, I feel like we gotta wait for like some sort of hard facts to come out of this because the most important part of it is like, all right, why did the fire start? What sort of was there some EV that had some sort of battery malfunction? What exactly was it? And we don't really know that yet. And I think that when that comes out, then we can, start to have, some harder discussions about, hey, like what's going on here, or maybe it was some freak thing and there's
Yeah,
really nothing to see, honestly. I feel like it could go either way, but
yeah,
yeah, obviously, like fire at Rivian factory, not a great headline.
right.
Not like that's not good for anything,
Yep.
any part of the company. But I wait and see, what's the cause, what's going on, and hopefully we can deduce some more things, and maybe it's less of a 5 o'clock fire alarm as a as it may have actually been, so to
Yeah.
speak. So
Again, it's a bad look, like, I mean, there
yeah,
was, I believe somebody was unfortunately killed at the Gladiator factory a couple of weeks ago in Toledo, and certainly tragic. And obviously, people want answers, but at the same time, nobody sort of thinks, hey, Jeep can't make Jeeps anymore. When you're a Rivian and things like this happen, again, that those questions raise some pretty big questions. So we'll see. Um, I think that's, take a cautious wait and see attitude, but obviously not the kind of headlines Rivian wants to be making. Um,
no, not at all.
not at all. So, on a more fun note, did you watch the Dutch Grand Prix this weekend?
I sure did
Y-
watch both qualifying and the Grand Prix.
Yeah, it was not bad. I saw a little bit of the race itself. That's a fun circuit to see on TV. I think it's a pretty photogenic race. Um, I don't know. You think Max has reason to be nervous? Things are getting a little bit different than they looked a couple months back.
Yeah, I think Max has great reason to be nervous, and Red Bull especially. Honestly, I think that the chances of Red Bull winning the constructors at this point are somewhat low. To be honest, with Sergio performing at the level that he is. I mean, obviously Sergio had a somewhat okay race here in Zandvoort, but it's going to take some serious heroics by Max, I think, to really get Red Bull over the top of McLaren at this point. Because I think the gap is only about 30 points after this weekend, which that's only going to be a few races, I think, before McLaren is right on top of and probably passing Red Bull. And that is assuming that Max is able to keep getting first or second or third in like every single race. And then the gap in the drivers' championship, of course, that's it's bigger right now. I want to say it's about 70-75 points. So if Max goes and gets second place like he did in Zandvoort here and is able to beat Oscar and maybe charging Ferrari or I mean obviously Mercedes has had a lot of success here recently too. At least heading into the summer break, they were nowhere in Zandvoort. But I think that Red Bull and Max are definitely on the back foot here and need to figure some things out and find some sort of update to get them some pace because yeah, Lando Norris winning by 22 seconds is not a good sign. I don't think, especially when it's Max in that Red Bull and like he can't do any better than that. Um, that's a bit of a yikes moment. And I know that Max admitted as much after the race too. Is like yeah, like we have a problem, we have to work on it, and yeah. So without a doubt, I think that I mean, what felt like a very sealed up drivers' championship at the start of this year is far from sealed, and I'm excited. Like we could have a race all the way to the end here, sort of the way that Max and Lewis went at it like a few years ago. It could really come down to the last race, which that's the best thing that could possibly happen in F1, I think. And if it actually comes down to that last race and all of the excitement, oh yeah.
No, I agree with you. And it's nice to have F1 still sort of relevant in the fall, especially in the United States. Obviously, it's relevant globally, but like just this weekend, college football is coming back, and I'm pretty excited about that. Then the NFL is the week after, and you see other sort of summer sports, like golf, for example, like they wrap up pretty quick into September with, their sort of playoff. And I think F1 with the pandemic, Americans kind of really got into it. It was just like a form of entertainment that was still there. And I think that momentum is still there, though it's maybe slowed a little bit. Uh, but it's still, I think, growing in the United States, and a competitive sort of cap to the season would be good because it keeps people watching. There is still another race in the United States at Coda, and this weekend's a big race at Monza. That's one of my favorite on the calendar. I mean, it's tricky because it's like the last official weekend of summer. The weather's nice. You want to be outside, but there's all this football. Monza's on there.
Mhm.
A lot of great sports. So, I will find some time if nothing else, I'll probably record Monza, like the race itself, and then watch it like late Sunday night, as I'm kind of vegging out. But, uh,
I I think it'll be a good one because Ferrari always shows up whenever the Monza race
oh yeah,
happens. and like to have them up there challenging
Hmm.
McLaren and Red Bull, like it should be a good one, I think. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
always a lot of passing too. There's enough straightaways that can use DRS and just start passing each other left and right. So yeah, it should definitely be a good race. And no, I guess weirdly, I could say I hope that Red Bull is a little bit more competitive with McLaren, which
Yeah.
is pretty much opposite of what I feel most fans have been hoping at the start of the season. But yeah, would be nicer to have like a 2 second gap instead of a 22-second gap at the end.
Yeah. And yeah, that's another good reason to get up early, get
Mm.
that's where the like being on Eastern time like we are, football hasn't started. So you can catch some qualifying and things like that. So
It's your little morning television, exactly.
indeed, before college game day. So
Yeah.
this is kind of weird news. The ID.Buzz is not cheap. I think it's even more expensive than we thought it might be.
Yeah.
I like this kind of quirky thing. We've been hit, the build up to this has been so long. I saw like the concept, I think when I was in my early 20s. I was at Pebble Beach when they rolled out, I don't know what version this was, the production prototype, August of 2017 edition Buzz, but I was there when they did some sort of thing around that. We've seen so many different versions of it, but now we're finally getting the pricing. And to me, 61.5 is, I don't know. I get what they're trying to do here. They don't want to make it like this cheap thing. They definitely want to give it an aura, like it's something to be desired. And I think it's going to have that. But I think you could have done that and caught it maybe at like 48, somewhere like that. Because I don't look at this and think that it really merits that high of a price tag. When you look at the range and even some of the basic things, like they're really paying for like, or the consumers are really paying because they want the rebirth of a cultural icon. I don't know. I don't think this icon resonated as deeply as say like, hey, I don't know, the return of a Mustang or something. So I think they overpriced it. What do you think?
Yeah, you're really paying for that cool factor, I think is what it really comes down to because it's priced way over like if you want to look at the minivan competitive set, it's nowhere close to any of those at its price. Like 61.5 to start is it's a tough price to justify, I'd say. If the range was more like 300 to 350 miles, I'd be like, okay, maybe we have somewhere to work from here. That's a lot more acceptable, especially I think on like a road trip style vehicle. But at 231 or 234 miles, just sort of depending whether you get the rear drive or the all-wheel drive one, that is a tough number to swallow, I think. And most of Americans, I know that I've talked to a lot of OEMs about this, and that like Americans want that number to start with a three for range. Whether or not they actually need that amount of range or not is an entirely separate story. But when you're paying a premium price tag like this, that a van that'll go up into the $70,000 range after options, that is tough to justify. I think to have that level of range and yeah, I mean, I will it sell? I think that they'll sell to the really, really committed and faithful right at the start. Maybe like a year or two, they'll have some pretty strong demand. But after that, if they're not gonna get like a big tax credit, if rules don't change, or if they don't just lower the price drastically, like I'm afraid that this thing is destined for pretty slow sales, honestly, at that price tag. You can't really justify that much money with that much range and performance. And that like one other small thing that sort of upset me when they did this is that the base Pro S, you can only get just like the base colors for it. So you can't get any of the cool like cherry red, energetic orange, mahi green, the blue. Like you have to step up to the higher, more expensive one to get that color. And it's like, okay, like obviously a lot of people might want this car because of that cool color option
Mhm.
that they might really be into. And it's just, I don't know, just feels like a somewhat anti-consumer nudge from Volkswagen. They're like, well, hey, if you want that color, you better go buy the like $3,000 or $4,000 more expensive trim, and then you can pay more for that color on top of that. Which is it's just another small little frustrating thing about it. So, you know, am I still really excited it's here? Yes, I am, but the price definitely puts a damper on things.
I think I will say this. I think probably at the start there will be a bit of buzz, forgive me, surrounding the launch. I think a lot of people, there'll be a fair amount of people who are truly excited. And I think there will be, like the first year will probably be pretty good. But I mean, after that, I think everybody who is going to get one is going to have one at that point. And that's where I think, to your point, it will probably lose momentum and it'll be tough to see this thing as a significant volume seller as the years roll on. I can't wait to drive it. I think this looks awesome. Very excited about the notion of it, but I think they missed the mark by about 10 grand, unless there's some sort of, incentives or something on here that I'm missing. Yeah, I don't know. I think they missed the mark by, again, at least 10 grand. So,
Yeah,
should we spend some money?
let's spend some money.
All right. So this comes from Reddit's Our Cars thread. We like to dip into there every now and then. If you're on Reddit, hey, please feel free to share Autoblog stories. Get us up in that conversation as well. So here's the writer asks, is having an old school luxury car as your first car practical? I'll be commuting a lot, but it'll be in short increments, 5 miles, 3 to 4 times a day. And I want something I can always look forward to getting in. The writer listed several options, including a 1989 BMW 7 Series. This is a 750 IL with the V frickin' 12 and a 2000 Jaguar XJ8. The budget's around 20 grand. So, well, there's a couple things to unpack here. First of all, what I think is having either of these two specifically for maybe you or me would be probably fine. It's like a third car. You go into it, you embrace the probably 4 to 6 months of the year when you can drive these things without worrying too much about everything going on. You know that you've got to set aside part of your 401k for maintenance, and you move on with your life and you have fun with it, because I would have fun with either of these cars. For a first car, I think they're probably going to be, I wouldn't say undrivable, but more challenging to drive than a conventional, first car might be. And I think the way to solve that would be to get into, say, Auto Trader or Autoblog or, any of the car sites out there where you can search, put in 20 grand, kind of pick the brand that offers a fair amount of enthusiast models and see what you could get. So what I came up with is looking at some of these listings. These just happen to be on Auto Trader. 2017 BMW X3. It's the xDrive 28i for 17 grand. It's got 69,000 miles on it. I almost feel like I should make a call on that. That seems like a decent deal overall. Seems like a responsible vehicle that's pretty well-rounded and can be handled by a younger driver. This is where I think is apparent, you kind of step in. You could look at like a 2015 BMW 3 Series, depending on the number of miles. That could be anywhere from 10 to 20. There's things like the X2 out there, and that just happens to go down the BMW rabbit hole. You can do the same exercise with Audis, with Jaguars, etc. For what it's worth, I personally, if it were my son or daughter or something, I would lean like crossover, and I would lean older, as in like 5 to 8 years old, but not super old, just because you want a car that's still relatively common on the road, easy to service, and isn't going to stress them out. Now, I don't know, maybe this guy's like a hardcore enthusiast, knows how to wrench on old European cars, and it would be fine. The commute is certainly short enough, but I mean, kids take their cars and who knows where they go. So I would lean a little more cautious, get something like from the 2015s forward. Sounds like the budget is there, plenty of room for a first car, that's for sure. And I would think something more cautious, like a crossover, like an X3 or, a Honda Civic, Honda CRV. Get that, to me, that's more like something you give or have your kid buy for a first car. So I guess my answer is great idea for an enthusiast, for like a third car who knows what they're getting into. For a first car, I would say no, and I would recommend going with something a bit newer and a bit more drivable and, you know, ostensibly safer. So what do you think?
So I don't think I would go as new as you. I would definitely say no to the suggested vehicles, though.
Okay.
Um, like just the V12, BMW, the XJ8. Those are some really wild choices to get as your first car. They might cost you, $10,000 brand new, but you should probably set aside another $20,000 over the next like 3 to 5 years to maintain them and to actually keep them on the road in full running condition. Especially that V12. That's an absolutely wild choice to make, I feel, if you're just getting into a car. Where I will take this, because I seems to be into old cars and whatnot, is I'd say get like a Lexus LS, just like I was talking about earlier in the show, of the same vintage. So get like the original Lexus LS 400, or even, you have $20,000, so you'll be able to afford more than like the original one. You could probably even get one from the early to mid 2000s, honestly. And just basically buy as much Lexus LS as you can. You seem to be a big fan of the giant boat sedans, and this is a giant boat of a sedan, and it will definitely be a lot cheaper to maintain and service than the German and or British solutions that are proposed. It's going to drive a lot like those. It's going to have a nice big silky V8 in it. It's going to have all of the features, cooled, heated, everything, power, everything, a great audio system. You're just gonna like driving it, I think. And if it's to commute, I don't. Does the handling really matter all that much if you're just driving it a few miles a day? Unless you're driving it on like the tail of the dragon or something like that, then those few miles, and just enjoy your big boat of a sedan. And yeah, I think that you can buy a lot of Lexus LS for that money and probably be just as happy, if not happier, than if you own like an S class or a 7 series of the same vintage. Because honestly, you'd probably be driving it more often than it's sitting in shops waiting for parts, um, and paying a lot more money for those for all of those parts too. So yeah, I'd go on an old Lexus LS. However, just like look at all of the generations, see which one you like the most. I'm a personal fan of like the original from 1990 to 94. But like all of them are, just as good of a choice, I think, honestly. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable response, a proportional response, as they would say on the West Wing. So, um, yeah, I think be interesting to see where this lands. Maybe I'll check out this thread in a few days, see what breaks loose. So, well, it's the final weekend of summer, not as far as the actual seasons go, but as far as most people treat it. What do you recommend people either eat or drink for this final weekend?
Man, so I had a pretty life-changing chicken sandwich experience the other day. If you're in Michigan, at least, go check out Saffron des Trois.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if you've ever had it. It's in the city, Detroit. But as like the best chicken sandwich I've ever had, like without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
It's a Moroccan chicken sandwich, and it is crazy, crazy good. As far as what to drink, um, what did I've been doing Leinenkugels and Oberons, honestly, recently, just trying to live out like the end of the summer vibes as best I can. So yeah, a little summer shandy, and just enjoying Oberon because as in case you guys needed a reminder about it, Bell's doesn't make it all year round.
Hmm.
They only make it in the spring and summer. So as soon as we hit the throes of fall and winter, you'll no longer be able to get Oberon. So go enjoy it while you still can.
All right. So I'm going to follow your lead. I'll give you two restaurant recommendations. Since you mentioned Detroit, I was at Mudgie's Deli, sat on their patio, had the roast beef sandwich with kind of like a mayonnaise kind of aioli thing. Very good. Um, Great place to spend sort of a nice transitional day, hot, cool-ish. And yeah, it's a great recommendation if you're in Detroit, whether it's the Grand Prix or the auto show, things like that. And then as far as drinking, I've been getting into the NA stuff. I tried uh, it's like the Wild Run IPA from the Athletic Brewing. It
Yeah.
tastes exactly the same as a normal IPA. So it's a nice way if I just want to try to have like maybe it's the middle of the week, you're just trying to get through things. You don't want to like necessarily cloud up your mind or your vision or, all those things. And it's a useful tool because it tastes the same. So I've been kind of into that, at least, when I want to, drink a beer, but not actually drink a beer. So it's pretty good stuff, I think.
It's a good beer on the job kind of beer almost,
There you go.
afternoon.
Yeah.
It's 3 p.m. All right, sure. Let me
Yeah.
go try one of these.
Yeah. For me, it's almost like a 9 o'clock beer at night,
Yeah.
not a breakfast beer, but like, hey, been doing all this other stuff. You get to that point of the night. Do I really want to start, putting things in my system that I may not feel good? Hey, here's an NA beer. Tastes the same,
Yeah.
That's it. All
Yes,
right.
indeed.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Autoblog Podcast. Thanks for hanging out, Zach. Shout out to our producer, Eric Meyer, who makes us sound good. If you have a Spend My Money, that's podcast@autoblog.com. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.